AJB Live will begin momentarily. AJB Live will begin momentarily.
A significant update from authorities this morning in the Gilgo Beach serial killings. An 11 o'clock Eastern press conference called on Long Island after suspect Rex Heuermann charged this morning in the deaths of two more women a couple of weeks after investigators returned to Heuermann's house for a search deeper into the home. The question is, what exactly did they find? New details in just the last few minutes. We have it all coming up here from the Stream Center.
Live from the Stream Center in Tampa, Florida. Top stories, breaking news, interactive coverage in the palm of your hand. This is Hey JB Live. Here's JB Biunno.
This is a case that you just get this sinking feeling that we might be at the more towards the beginning of it rather than the end of this story. Rex Heuermann having a court appearance this morning. That is a court appearance that was not accessible to the media, at least for video and live streaming capabilities. Welcome into the Stream Center, folks. JB here with you ahead of an 11 a.m. Eastern press conference. That's 28 minutes from now. If you're here early, welcome in. We're going to kind of set the stage for you with what we've learned, and we have learned quite a bit in just the last half hour or so. If you want the details in an article format, of course, you can click on the link in the description on this video. It will take you to WFLA.com, perhaps the WFLA app if you have that installed on your device. And we have new details in from the Associated Press, from NBC News New York, from WABC, a lot of local stations and national outlets reporting on this morning as they comb through more and more documents in the serial killer case on Long Island. You saw there the four original victims, the Gilgo Four, as they were originally described. If you've missed this story, if you're unfamiliar with it, we covered it last year. This has been alarming and haunting for investigators over many, many years, as on Ocean Parkway on Long Island, bodies and body parts, and this live stream, we are going to get a bit gruesome because of the details coming out this morning, so viewer discretion is advised, but bodies and body parts being found along Ocean Parkway for an extended period of time, many, many years, and this is a case that has puzzled authorities for a long time, up until last year, when former New York City architect Rex Heuermann was casually walking down the street when he was bombarded by investigators, taken away in a police cruiser. And then, of course, the subsequent investigation went into the home, and more details came out about the allegations connecting Rex Heuermann to multiple cases on Long Island, cases involving young females, and many of them young sex workers that fell victim to a serial killer, as authorities described it. And all signs pointed to Rex Heuermann, who lived on Massapequa Park, or in Massapequa Park. You see some of the images from the home here. You see some of the work that's been done on the property. And this is one of those cases that we'll talk about where it's so alarming, because do you really know the person who lives down the street from you, or even in the home next door to you? Somebody that appears to be, just an average citizen, somebody who commutes in and out of New York City, a businessman who you might see at your local pizzeria, you might see at your local convenience store. You never think twice about them, but what really lies within their home and what lies within their past is something that you could never imagine in really your worst nightmares. So Rex Heuermann this morning in a New York courtroom charged in the deaths of two more women. The 60-year-old appeared before a judge now facing charges that he killed Jessica Taylor and Sandra Costilla, young women who were long suspected of being the victims of men that were preying on sex workers. Now, what's interesting about this case is that one of these victims has, as I understand it, in covering this case over the last year or so, one of these victims was very much on the radar of investigators, that being the 2003 death of Jessica Taylor. Her remains were found, or partially found, near Gilgo Beach in a wooded area of a spot called Manorville, more east on Long Island. And then there was the case of Sandra Castillo, or am I pronouncing that correctly? Apologies, because I'm seeing it here, different spelling in two different articles. Sandra Costilla, who was killed back in 1993. The Taylor case is still, pretty old, going back to 2003, 21 years ago. But with DNA evidence, we're going to get into some of what's been unsealed this morning. Costilla was killed in 1993. That means that if investigators have this right, a serial killer has been living among just ordinary folks, you and me, folks on Long Island for more than 3 decades, getting away with murder after murder without being discovered until just last year. And forensics and DNA is part of this. But I want to go back to the search efforts that were done in May at the Heuermann home here in Massapequa Park. Because we're going to get into some various reports here, because I'm going to spotlight some of the local reporters doing extraordinary work, talking to sources with the DA's office, talking to Suffolk County investigators, doing extraordinary work to try to get more pieces of the puzzle here. And one curious note came from News 12 Long Island, who spoke to a source that said that they went behind the wood paneling in the Heuermann basement. Now, what led investigators back to the basement? What led them to check behind that wood paneling? Why was the wood paneling not checked previously? All questions that we might find out when District Attorney Ray Tierney speaks in the 11 a.m. press conference. But that, of course, it paints a very visual picture, and a picture of what could be a house of horrors. The idea that investigators had to go into the basement and rip apart wood paneling to find evidence. Because if you're ripping apart wood paneling, you are finding things that someone who lived in that home did not want you to find. And now, with the unsealing of the indictment and more of the documents that are being released to the media and released to the public this morning, we are now getting more details, and let's get to that now. In a court filing, this is via the Associated Press, details on WFLA.com, reading it from WFLA.com because the AP does a phenomenal job. Prosecutors say they were able to use forensic testing methods to match hairs found on or near the vicinity of both victims to a DNA profile that is a likely match to Heuermann. Additionally, prosecutors say they discovered a quote-unquote planning document on a hard drive found in Heuermann's basement that was used to, quote-unquote, methodically blueprint his killings. The document, including Heuermann's concerns about leaving behind forensic evidence, guidance for cleaning and washing bodies, and notes on how to improve, quote-unquote, next time. These are things that we expect to be expanded on in the 11 o'clock press conference. I've been told the satellite feed coming into the stream center here at exactly 10:50. So that's about 10 or so-ish minutes from now. Of course, the stream center works. If for those of you unfamiliar, the stream center, one of the biggest functions of the stream center is, of course, to bring in high-quality feeds from around the country and share them and make them as accessible as possible to you wherever you're watching, whether you are here with us in Florida, up in New York, elsewhere in the country, or somewhere watching around the world. I'd like to see in the comment section where exactly everyone is watching from. Another function of the Stream Center, of course, is to feature your comments. We are going to get into that in the next few minutes with hashtag HeyJB. You can also go to www.heyjb.live and submit a VIP comment there. It's got a better chance, if you do it this way, a better chance of basically sticking on my screen here and not scrolling up and me missing it. So submit a VIP comment on heyjb.live in a browser. That's exactly what it looks like right here on a phone. Or, of course, you can just on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, whatever it may be, just use hashtag HeyJB with your comment, and hopefully it gets my attention here in the Stream Center. 11 o'clock press conference. We're going to get more. Prosecutors said that they used and incorporated a new investigative task force in this case and used mobile phone location data and DNA samples to link Heuermann to some of the victims. So the original Gilgo Four, Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthélemy, Amberlynn Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes were the original four. Now we have two more, but here's the thing. There's so many more potential victims in this case. There have been other remains, other missing persons cases in the Gilgo Beach area that investigators say follows enough of a pattern that leads them to be quite concerned. So that's why I said at the beginning, are we at the start of a very, very deeply disturbing rabbit hole? Is this just, are we going to unearth more? If investigators continue to go back to the Heuermann home, are they going to discover more inside that house, linking Heuermann to more victims? As I say this, and as before I look at some of the comments that are coming in, as I say this, really important to remind our audience, Rex Heuermann has maintained his innocence, and he has been labeled as the Long Island serial killer, LISK, on social media. I understand that in a world of limiting things down, consolidating down words and character counts and using acronyms, I get it. But please, let's all be responsible and remember that everyone deserves a day in court. Even those who are accused of the world's most heinous atrocities, you are still entitled to your day in court to have an opportunity with our legal system to prove your innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty. And I would hope that, of course, people, Rex Heuermann is a suspect. He's an alleged killer. He is not the Long Island serial killer. Investigators are going to label him as such, but as of now, as far as the court of public opinion, I would hope that people identify him, at least for now, as a suspect, as the alleged in this case. Let's say hello to the chat and bring everybody in. We've got people watching from Italy, Australia. A wild set of court cases going on at the moment. We just, of course, had Chad Daybell get wrapped. He, of course, is going to face the death penalty. The Karen Reed stuff is utterly mind-blowing, and some of the best on YouTube are doing extraordinary work right now covering that case, friends of mine. And so we're here with this press conference today, again, because a primary function of the Stream Center is to provide you with high-quality feeds. And we're going to do that with the presser that begins in about 15 minutes from now. So we will say hello to the comment section. Again, if you want to get a comment on screen, you can just use hashtag HeyJB or a VIP comment on heyjb.live. And we'll wait for some of those comments to come in, like Bodycam USA saying hashtag HeyJB, thanks for covering this. Yeah, look, this is a story that we covered last year. Of course, want to do our due diligence in following up. Our great moderators, including Makeup by Rocky, doing a great job. Please stay respectful in the comment section. You can use hashtag HeyJB if you'd like your comment to be featured on screen. Thank you to our mods. Thank you to Rocky and everybody else joining us here. So I'll keep an eye out for other comments, people who are saying where they're watching from. Again, I can only display your comment if it uses hashtag HeyJB or if it comes in to heyjb.live. That way that we're not just putting your comment, without consent on screen. Want to make sure that you're participating in the process here. So let's continue to go into what some others are reporting. So that's what the Associated Press are reporting. And I think right now behind the scenes, what's happening is you have reporters from various agencies, various media outlets that are combing through document after document. I have not seen the document dump yet. I don't know if it's 10 pages, 100 pages, 1,000 pages. So I don't know how daunting of a task it is, but I know right now behind the scenes, they're combing through those documents to find out what evidence ties Heuermann to the two new victims that have been associated with this case, as well as the original Gilgo 4. Also a reminder, this is heartbreaking for those families that have not had closure for decades. I mean, literally decades. Can you imagine being the family of Sandra? Can you imagine being the family of Jessica? I mean, 20 plus, 30 plus years of not having any idea as to what happened to your loved one, and they're getting these answers now. They very well could be in the chat. We've seen it on live streams in the past. People who are looking for live streams sometimes tend to find us. And so that's why we're saying be kind and respectful. But can you imagine this being the culmination of all of the prayers that you have sent for many, many years, hoping for answers as to what happened to your daughter, your niece, your mom, whoever it may be. Just utterly wild. I did not think, and I think others agree, this case would not be going back 30 plus years, but here we are. We might be at the tip of the iceberg of something prolific, and that's not to be, sensationalized or anything like that. These are the acts of evil, and every time that you add one of them up, it becomes more and more deeply disturbing. Real quick, Manda Panda, #AJB, how many killings have been charged with now? 6 total. The Gilgo 4 original ones, and then, of course, you have the 2 more that have been added on as of this morning. And with that, to Manda Panda and the rest of our audience, we do now have our feed here in the Stream Center. We'll bring down the audio here for just a bit. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney. You can see New York media, national media filing in. And so we will stay with this feed for the duration of the live stream. And then, of course, after we hear Tierney and perhaps others speak and hopefully answer questions, we will be able to get more into what we have learned and still what remains a mystery in this case. Back here with you live. We'll continue to answer some more questions. Princess says, #JB, this case gets more bizarre by the day and must be horrific for the families of the victims. Thinking of them all. Yeah. I'm somebody who's always thinking of victims. And really, and their families, their loved ones, their friends. The uncertainty of this surrounding, the uncertainty of this surrounding all of them is just, I would imagine it's suffocating. So sometimes, and sometimes at these press conferences, some district attorneys, it depends on their style. It depends on how they operate. And some district attorneys will ask, the family members of the victims, do you want to speak? Do you want to have your voice heard after all these many, many years, decades of uncertainty? We are closing in here on justice. Would you like to speak? Sometimes you will hear a district attorney introduce a family member. We don't know if that's going to happen today. I haven't seen any reports in the last 20, 30 minutes as to who has arrived here at this location, but yeah, no, it is horrific for the families, Princess. It's absolutely just terrible. Looking for some others. Angels watching from Wichita Falls, Texas. See, Deborah, I was thinking the same thing. So Deborah's comment, #HeyJB, why did they not stay searching the house initially? Now they have gone back in a couple of weeks ago after his family has gone back into the house after the initial search. Yeah, so if you remember last summer, they were at the home for a long time. And you're going to have investigators who are specialized in combing through every square inch of a home. And, exactly, again, sources telling News 12 Long Island that one of the things investigators did was they went into the basement and went behind wood paneling. That to me says, okay, so was that not part of the initial search effort, or was there, did something pop up over the course of the investigation that led them to say, hey, we should probably check behind some of this wood paneling? How did that get glossed over or skipped or missed last summer? I mean, of course, it's good that you find it now and that it doesn't go, undiscovered for years or decades. But yeah, I'm curious as to how the A to Z took shape here. So I think that was just Tierney walking in. As a reminder, for those of you just joining us here in the comment section, as soon as the presser begins, I'm not the type of live streamer where you see me on screen or see any of me. It's not about me. I will, of course, hit one button. We bring up audio full, make sure that you have as clear of a signal as possible, as good of audio as possible. Sometimes we'll boost audio if the original signal is coming in low on the sat feed. We can do a lot of things here in the Stream Center to make sure that you can easily see and easily hear the information being presented at a press conference like this. So thank you for joining us.
I know my second one doesn't work either.
And I'd now like to welcome in a new audience joining us here on Hey JB Live on the WFLA Facebook page and on my Facebook page. Hello to wherever you are watching from. Welcome to the office of Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney. That's on Long Island in New York for a significant update, as it's been described, in the Gilgo Beach serial killings. Suspect Rex Heuermann was in court this morning, charged now in the deaths of two more women, and a indictment has been unsealed with new documents shedding new light on exactly how we got to now a total of 6 victims connected to Heuermann in this case. Heuermann is innocent until proven guilty, but there are, of course, a lot of questions that remain because there's still a lot of victims in that area or missing persons cases in that area on Long Island. Perhaps the most eyebrow-raising development over the last 24 hours pertains to one of the victims. Again, for those of you just joining us, if you've been with us on YouTube or on WFLA.com for a while, you've heard me say this, but one of the victims, Sandra Costilla, she was killed in 1993. So Heuermann originally connected to cases going back, many years, but I mean, now we're talking about cases spanning more than 3 decades. Yeah, and some of the victims in this case have disappeared in the mid-1990s. So this is a very complex puzzle that investigators are now starting to piece together, and everything with the forensics that have come back, all the DNA lab work that has come back, it points to Heuermann. There's been some great work done already on the unsealing of the documents in this case, and I've seen some reports coming in, some snapshots of the documents on Twitter that has popped up, including some saying that he's in the 99.99 percentile of a positive DNA match, and so it's adding up with each individual victim in this case. But my goodness, how many more victims are there? Are they all going to be female? Is it going to be just the 6? I believe there's some 1 or 2 Jane Does involved in this case, if I remember correctly. So, again, we are now 5 minutes away. 11 a.m. Eastern is when this press conference is scheduled to begin. When the press conference begins, I will just hit one button just like this. I slide out of the picture. We all listen in together. And then afterwards, I will slide back in and we will kind of break down what we have learned. In the meantime, a couple more questions or comments. You can use hashtag HeyJB or go to heyjb.live to submit a VIP comment over there. Let's see what we've got coming in. GJ says, we've been waiting for this for years. And I believe he'll be linked to so many more. 6 is, we're already in serial killer territory. And it with the other cases that have been linked to the area of Ocean Parkway on the south end of Long Island, it just makes your heart drop, because how long has this person, the alleged in this case, just been walking around basically just like the day he was arrested? He, based on all the reports, he was just walking around New York like it was just any other day. He had no idea that police were tailing him, had no idea that investigators were on his trail. And then all of a sudden, he's one of the most recognized suspects in the country because he's been accused of such heinous acts. Here we have some folks filing in. 10:57 Eastern. Looks like they are going to start here on time, which of course I know we all appreciate, and it looks like it is going to be an entire team represented, as you would expect. Think about all the investigators, the countless hours that have been poured into this case. I would guarantee you that the investigators that you see here are the ones who have been working on this case. They're standing up here for good reason, flanked by Suffolk County DA Raymond Tierney, to be able to get credit for their extended work over many, many years. Again, an investigative task force put together to bring justice to these families. And we are now closing in on 11 o'clock Eastern. So that's 2.5 minutes from now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of questions. Golden Girl saying, how could his wife not have known? I mean, you know what? And I'm curious with the Q&A. If we do get a Q&A with Tierney, some of the reporters in the room that have been covering this case far more extensively than I have, that are local, obviously, to New York and Long Island, will they ask questions about Heuermann's wife, about how many people were, how good was Heuermann at concealing evidence? Again, for those of you who are just filing in, I want to read this here one more time from the Associated Press, because these details are coming out in the last hour. Prosecutors say that they were able to use new forensic testing methods to match hairs found or near the vicinity of both victims to a DNA profile that was likely a match to Heuermann. Additionally, this is important, they discovered a quote-unquote planning document on a hard drive found in Heuermann's basement to methodically blueprint his killings. How good of a job did Heuermann do at concealing his alleged actions? I think we're about to find out. Let's go full screen. We'll bring up audio full blast and listen in for Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney speaking on the Gilgo Beach serial killings shortly after Heuermann was charged in the deaths of 2 more women this morning in a New York courtroom. Again, for those of you just joining us, we will be live after the press conference concludes to break down what we have learned here from the Stream Center.
Really? Jennifer said she's only going to go for like a minute or two, so it'll even out. Oh, since I talked to you, I started allergy shots. I've been going twice a week. I mean, I haven't felt any better yet, but I mean, they said it takes like a year.
As we wait for Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney speaking here, and you can clearly see that he has not filed into the room yet to stand at the podium. A VIP comment just came in from Z Gomes to www.hjb.live.
Final mic check.
Final mic checks here.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Heartbreaking and terrifying. Sending prayers and strength to the victims' families, and a thank you there, of course. And of course, you can always go to our website if you want to submit stories that we should be covering here from the Stream Center as well.
That gentleman will be too. All right. Take care, guys.
Again, we're live on all platforms from New York, from Suffolk County, for the press conference from District Attorney Ray Tierney. After Rex Heuermann was in court this morning. Really quickly, as a reminder, there were no cameras or video cameras allowed in court, so we could not live stream Heuermann's appearance this morning. I believe that still images might come out. And of course, more importantly, the documents are already being combed through by reporters in New York, figuring out just some of what investigators have used to get to this stage in the investigation. If you are just filing in here, whether you're on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, Facebook, or YouTube, you haven't missed the press conference. It is about to begin here momentarily.
It's okay. I'm so used to it. But thank you.
Or the double panel. Bathroom. That's what I love, the double. Did you? There was nothing. What day?
I said it was appearing to start on time, so I think I might have jinxed it. But we're about 5 minutes past the hour now. It's about to begin here any moment. For those of you just joining in the chat, we are waiting on Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney. Of course, just paying attention to the room with the podium. Just for context, a lot of times this can be just to go over some final details, what's going to be said. Also, too, a lot of this can be about whether or not they're going to take questions afterwards and who is going to speak at the podium. These are things that sometimes get figured out on a hectic morning, can get figured out relatively close to the beginning of a press conference. I know because I know a ton of people that are public information officers for various law enforcement agencies across the country, and rarely do they start exactly on time. So if you're just joining us, you haven't missed the beginning of it. Again, the press conference here from the office of Suffolk County District Attorney Raymond Tierney on the Gilgo Beach serial killings. And it looks like more folks are coming up now to stand behind Tierney. And as Tierney probably gets closer to walking up here, as a reminder, after the press conference concludes, we'll be live to break down what we have learned, whether there are some new details, and also, too, what kind of questions get asked if we do get that Q&A. Live across all platforms on Hey JB Live. Just as we noted about 15 minutes ago, some DAs like to give an opportunity to family members of victims to speak. That's what appears to be taking shape here. So we'll see. Sometimes they just want to stand there. Sometimes they're given the opportunity to speak. It really depends on each individual family. And we'll see exactly which family is being represented here, because, again, we're talking about 2 new victims with this case. Let's listen in live.
Well, good morning. Thanks everyone for coming and dealing with our logistical issues in the rain. We appreciate it. We're here today to announce additional charges in the case against the defendant Rex Heuermann. Obviously, at the onset, I will say these are just allegations. The indictment has just been filed. This is a case, court proceeding, and each and every one of these allegations have got to be proven in court. And we certainly look forward to doing just that. Today, as you've just seen, the District Attorney's Office filed a superseding indictment charging the defendant with 2 additional murders. Those charges pertain to the 1993 murder of Sandra Castilla and the 2003 murder of Jessica Taylor. So that's in addition to the previously charged murders of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello, which occurred in 1997, 1999, June of 2010, and September of 2010, respectively. So my intention now, here today is to discuss those charges, discuss the contents of the bail letter, and then turn it all over to you all for questions. But before I do that, before I discuss the indictment, and the developments in the case, I want to thank our law enforcement partners, many of whom are here today. First and foremost, I want to thank the Suffolk County Police Department. My understanding is Commissioner Waring was unavailable today. I spoke with Rob, but he certainly brought a contingent of Suffolk County PD to represent his office. We have Deputy Police Commissioner Kevin Catalina. We have Chief of Detectives Darrell Simmons. We have Deputy Chief Stan Grodsky, and then we have the commanding officer of the Major Crimes Unit, which includes the Homicide Unit, Sean Barron. So we want to thank all of them for their partnership. We want to thank the Homicide Unit for their continued efforts in this case. We have the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office here. Again, spoke with Sheriff Toulon. He's traveling out of state, so he couldn't make it. But it's my understanding that Under Sheriffs Steve Kios and Keith Taylor are here. We certainly want to thank them for their assistance as well. With the New York State Police, we have Major Stephen Udis, as well as Lieutenant Ken Gine. Again, we thank them not only for their presence here today, but more importantly, for their partnership in this case. We have the FBI, Supervising Special Agent Don Ansbacher is here. I want to thank the FBI for their continued assistance in this case. And then I don't believe they're present, but we have we want to thank the United States Secret Service for their assistance in this case. We want to thank the Suffolk County Crime Lab. I know they're not here, but their work has been tireless and instrumental, and we are really very appreciative to them. I especially want to thank the K-9 units from the New York State Police, from the Suffolk County Police, and from the NYPD, who came out a couple of weeks ago, and in very difficult conditions. They really did a fabulous job helping us to search an area of interest to us, and they went above and beyond. So again, I want to thank them. I frequently neglect to thank my own team, so I'm going to take the opportunity to thank them. We have, Chief Zacharis. We have, I want to thank them. I want to thank our ADAs, many of whom are working on this case. You heard from Nick Santamartino. We've got Larry Opizzo. We got Andrew Lee. We got Michelle Haddad. We've got a whole host of ADAs that have really been instrumental in us. Our investigators, our analysts, really fantastic work that they've done. I want to thank the victims' families, many of whom are here today, not only on the new charges, but for the original Gilgo 4. And this is what this case is about. We don't ever forget that. This case is about the victims and their families, and hopefully providing them with that small measure of closure. And the families have been nothing short of incredible. The way that they continue to support their loved ones and each other is really inspiring to us, and really helps us to keep coming in and working this case as aggressively as we've been doing. This case is a true collaboration, and again, mentioning all of those partners, without the contribution of any one of those partners, our ability to do this case would have been severely compromised. So again, I know I mentioned a lot of names, I know I went through a lot of agencies, but I just don't do that because it's the polite thing to do. I do it because it's the right thing to do, because they've really helped us instrumentally and will continue to help us going forward. Now, I'll just, before I get into the individual murders, the two new charges, what I want to talk about is at the time of the initial arraignment of three out of the four Gilgo 4, and then at the superseding arraignment on the charges pertaining to Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and the Gilgo 4 was completed. At that time, we said that we were going to continue to investigate this case, that the grand jury with regard to the Gilgo 4 is over, but the case continues. The criminal prosecution continues, but the investigation continues, and that investigation has been expanded. The investigation has been expanded both to the bodies that were found on Gilgo and beyond. That's what we said, and I think that has come to fruition today with these two new cases, or new charges. First off, with regard to Jessica Taylor, that her body was recovered on July 26, 2003, off of just west of Halsey Manor Road in Manorville. She was found on her back. She was decapitated, and her hands and arms were severed just below the elbows. Notably, a tattoo that she had been obliterated with a sharp object. 8 years later, her arms and skull were found on Ocean Parkway. Those remains were found on the same side of the road on the Ocean Parkway as the Gilgo 4. They were found less than a mile away from the remains of the Gilgo 4, and all of the 5 remains were located within 50 feet of the roadway. And I think you see that, the graphic on page 5 of our bail document illustrates that. Jessica Taylor was last seen on July 19th in New York City. She was working as a sex worker. We know from from our investigation, from a number of financial records and other records, that the defendant, Rex Heuermann, was in New York City on July 19th. Jessica Taylor last spoke to her mom on July 21st, and then that was about 8:41 p.m. Then less than 2 hours later, her phone call made its last outgoing call, and we heard no more from Jessica or from her phone. The family alerted law enforcement on July 25th when she failed to return to her home for her mom's birthday. and then shortly thereafter, on July 26th, Jessica's body was recovered. At that time, the Suffolk County PD did canvass. They spoke to witnesses, and the witnesses had observed the night before, about 13 hours prior to the 911 call, they saw a dark-colored pickup truck backed up in the vicinity of off of Halsey Manor Road, where Jessica's body was eventually recovered. Computer activity by the defendant, which we were able to access through our search warrants, indicated that 2 days later, on July 28th, he accessed a Newsday article with regard to information on the case and with regard to the police looking for information on the case. That search was erased, but we were able to recover it. 1 day later, on July 29th, notably, the defendant was seeking to purchase a new Chevy Avalanche truck, notwithstanding the fact that he already had a dark-colored Chevy Avalanche truck, which was only approximately 4 months old at the time. The Chevy Avalanche truck, which we've been discussing all along, is dark-colored. His internet search related to the acquisition of the same Chevy Avalanche truck, but this time in white or bright blue. Bright-colored truck, completely different from the dark-colored truck that he'd been riding in. And again, once again, that purchase with regard to the new trucks, that was attempted to be obliterated. We spoke, and Nick Santamartino did the bail application, so I don't want to repeat all that Nick said, but with regard to the hairs found in this case, Jessica Taylor was found laying atop a surgical drape. A male hair was found between the body and the drape. That was recovered back in 2003. In 2023, we brought that hair was brought to the mitochondrial testing lab for mitochondrial DNA analysis, and was able to the result. 99.96% of the population, but not Rex Heuermann, the defendant. Then again, later in 2024, we brought to a second lab for testing, and once again, the result was the defendant could not be excluded as the donor of that hair, and it's 1.837 times 10 to the 603rd power more likely that it came to, that it matched the defendant or someone matching the defendant's DNA profile than a member of the population at large. And that number, just so it's 1.837 times 10 to the 603rd power. So what you do is you take that 1.837 and you move that decimal point over 63 places and add zeros. That's the number. That number doesn't exist, it's so big. Among other things that we were able to establish with regard to the murder of Jessica Taylor was, once again, family travel. We were able to determine that at the time of the disappearance and death of Jessica Taylor, once again, the defendant's family was out of the state. They were staying at a resort known as Smuggler's Notch in Vermont. We were able to corroborate that information through witness statements, photos, and phone and financial records. In addition, there was a hard drive that backed up to a Palm Pilot, which was the defendant's date book, and in that, and again, this is chronicled in the bail application, but in that date book, it's indicated that his wife is in Virginia at Smugs from July 20th through July 27th, and that's page 14 of the bail document. With regard to the 1993 discovery of Sandra Castilla, again, on November 20th, 1993, two individuals, while hunting in that wooded area of Southampton in the vicinity of Old Fish Cove Road in North Sea, discovered her body. She was lying on her back with her arms outstretched over her head. Her legs were uncovered, and her shirt was pressed over her head. The victim suffered numerous sharp force injuries, 25 in all, which we believe were post-mortem, and these were injuries to her face, torso, breasts, left thigh, and in her vaginal area. Once again, we had hairs recovered from Sandra Castilla. This is chronicled in the bail application. There were 2 hairs from Sandra Castilla's remains that are of particular significance in this case. One was a female hair that was recovered from the victim's right arm, and one was a male hair that was recovered from a tape lift of one of the shirts that the victim was wearing that was pushed above her head. In 2014, about 10 years ago, the 2 hairs plus another female hair, which were found on Castilla, were sent to an outside mitochondrial DNA lab for testing, and at that time, John Bitroff was excluded as the donor of those 3 hairs. Those once the task force began investigating Gilgo and related cases, those hairs were retested in 2023 and 2024 and compared with the defendant's known sample from the buccal swab that we obtained. Regarding that male hair, the mitochondrial DNA profile developed from that male hair on the victim Castilla and the profile developed from the defendant's buccal swab are match, and specifically at a rate that would exclude 99.96% of and defendant Heuermann therefore cannot be excluded as the contributor of that male hair on Castilla. In March of 2024, that same male hair or an extract therefrom was brought to the same outside lab for nuclear DNA testing, and once again the results came back, and which found it was 4.347 times 10 to the 332 power more likely to have come from a person genetically identical to Rex Heuermann than from an unrelated individual. So that's 4.347, and then you move that decimal point over 332 times to get the odds. Again, an astronomically large number. Regarding the female hair, prior to with regard to the female hair, one of the female hairs that was recovered on Ms. Castilla, prior to Ms. Castilla's disappearance, the defendant had been living with a female individual at his home in Massapequa Park. The female individual lived with the defendant at his current residence through the summer and into the early fall of 1993, and vacated the premises approximately 2 months or so prior to Ms. Castilla's death in 1993. Once we got those 2 female hairs, once we knew of those 2 female hairs' existence, we went out and obtained a DNA profile, a buccal swab, from this female. And that DNA profile that we obtained from the female's buccal swab, we sent it to the mitochondrial testing lab. And again, it was able to exclude 99.98% of the North American population as the contributor of said hair, but it could not exclude the female who was living with Rex Heuermann. Again, we brought that same DNA and extract to the nuclear DNA testing, and the female's hair was tested and compared with the female hair that was recovered on the victim Castilla, and it was found to be 4.578 times 10 to the 1,040th power more likely have come from a person genetically identical to the female witness who was living with Rex Heuermann in 1993, shortly before Ms. Castilla's death, than from an unrelated individual. Again, that's 4.578, and you move that decimal point over 1,040 places, and that's the number. There was an additional female hair that was recovered in 2014. That was recovered, that was compared to both the female living with Mr. Heuermann and the defendant, and we could not get a match on that, and that remains unidentified, that female hair. So we have those DNA results, and again, we were able to establish, similar to all the other cases, that at or around the time of Ms. Castilla's disappearance and murder, Rex Heuermann was living alone at the house in Massapequa Park, and had unfettered access to the house, and no one else was living with him at the time. So now I want to discuss some of the newly discovered digital evidence in the case. Before I discuss that, I just wanted to clarify some of the things that we've been talking about in our earlier press conferences. You were asked I was asked specifically about smart devices and digital devices that were recovered from the home and business of the defendant in connection with this case. So I just want to catalog that for you so you get a sort of flavor of what it was. We've recovered 15 different types of cameras. We've recovered 27 computers. We've recovered 58 internal hard drives. We recovered 22 external hard drives or solid drives. We recovered 46 cell phones. We recovered 9 Wi-Fi routers, 44 SD micro cards, which are like jump routers, 17 tablets, 42 USB devices, 8 laptop cards, 4 GPS devices, 11 music devices, 36 SIM cards, 33 miscellaneous items, and 647 CD floppy disks or VSH or miscellaneous tapes. Again, in the months subsequent to the arrest, we've been endeavoring through our own office and with the help of the Secret Service to analyze that massive amount of data. Analysis of those devices has revealed, certainly, that Heuermann had a significant collection of violent, bondage, and torture pornography, which was dating back to 1994, and that material was very similar to the condition that the 2 latest victims were left in. In addition to that, it is alleged that the pornographic images that were accessed by Heuermann are consistent with the crime scenes of both Sandra Casilla and Jessica Taylor. Now, as part of our processing of the electronic devices, the task force discovered a Microsoft Word document entitled HK 2002 through 2004. That was discovered on a laptop in unallocated space, meaning there was an attempt to erase that document. But as most forensic experts know, that even when a document is erased on a device, it is the user could no longer access that document, but forensic experts using particular software can retrieve it, and this document was retrieved in this case. It was a locally created draft, which means the document itself was created on the laptop. It wasn't downloaded from the internet. The document was modified. It was originally created in 2000, and it was overwritten a number of times and modified between 2001 and 2002. Now, as alleged in the bail application, the task force believes that this is a planning document, and it was utilized by Heuermann to methodically blueprint and plan out his kills with excruciating detail. We allege that this document evinces the defendant's intent in committing the charged crimes, that his intent was specifically to locate these victims, to hunt them down, and to bring them under his control and to kill them. His motivations, meticulous planning, and clear intent is obvious. His intent was nothing short but to murder these victims. And we allege that the methodology, that the exact method by which these murders were committed, in excruciating detail in that document, is in some cases identical to the methodology used to murder the 6 victims in this case. Now, I don't want to speak further on the document. I believe the document speaks for itself. So if anybody has any questions about the document, I'd be more than willing to answer them. But before turning it over for questioning, I want to reiterate, right from the very beginning of this case, from the onset of the case, the first indictment, we said that the case was not over. We said we were going to continue to investigate the case of the Gilgo 4 and find more evidence. We've done that. We've said that we were going to expand the investigation both on Gilgo and off, and to investigate new cases. We've done that, and that's resulted in the 2 new charges that you see here today. So that's what we've done. That's what we've continued to do, and my office, along with our partners, are not going to stop. This case continues. So with that, I will turn it over for questions.
Mr.
I had a
Tierney,
question
you talked
about-
We'll just go, if we could go right to left.
About the plan,
I didn't see you down there.
It's okay. Because of this wet document that he had, planning these murders out, why is it second degree, not first degree? Isn't that premeditated?
So first degree, I mean, there are a number of different charging theories you could use for murder in the first degree. One of them is if you charge a murder within a specific period of time. I think it's 18 months. So if you look at, so we have 3 murder 1 charges and 6 murder 2 charges. And if you look at the time of the deaths, Sandra Castilla, 93, Jessica Taylor, 2003, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 2007, Melissa Bartholomew, 2009, Megan Wardeman, 2010, and Amber Costello, 2010. Those last 3, Bartholomew, Costello, and Wardeman, fit within that one. The other ones, unfortunately, fall outside, so we're unable to bring that charge with regard to those, the other 5, the other 3 victims. So that's why it's different, just sort of the way New York State law is set up.
And Mr.
I wanted to ask about how this expands the search now, because now with this indictment, the earliest murder now changes to 1993, which gives it many more years than we had before. So how does this expand the search? How are you guys expanding this to find out who other victims that are possibly involved in?
Well, I think first and foremost, it expands the information for the public and the media. It doesn't change anything for us. We were, I think in March of this year, we learned of this document. We have been investigating other things. So again, my confidence in saying that we were going to move off of the Gilgo 4 to the new body and off of Gilgo itself was based upon my knowledge of the investigation. So that's something that we've been doing for a while now. It's just sort of become publicly known.
How did you know Sam?
We have no information with regard to that.
Off of that. So the alleged murders happening between 93 and 2010, just how alarming is this sweeping timeline you're looking at?
Well, I think this whole case in general is alarming. And I think it underscores that which we already knew, that we have an individual who we are alleging, and again, these are allegations, meticulously planned and executed 6 separate murders. So that in and of itself speaks for itself.
And there are other victims named in the court documents. Are more charges on the way?
So we're going to continue, again, we're going to continue to investigate. And we'll talk about whatever other investigation we're undergoing, when and if we bring those charges.
And Mr. Tierney, in your document, you mentioned the words torture, bondage, violence, and also Stockholm Syndrome. Is there any evidence to reveal that perhaps Rex Heuermann took these women or any of them captive in his home, attempted to brainwash them, put him under his control?
Well, that's what that document contains, and again, that speaks for itself. We'll make arguments with regard to that, and at the trial. The specific reference to Stockholm Syndrome, that pertains to a book, Mindhunter, by a former FBI profiler, John Douglas. His name escaped me for a moment. And so we know there are specific page references to that book and stuff such as sexual substitution, torture, and also Stockholm Syndrome. And our argument, it's our allegation that the defendant was referencing that Mindhunter book not to gain insight into his own behavior or to modify or change it, but rather to use it as a means of improving his methodology and avoid capture by the authorities.
Was that book found?
Sir, what about Valerie Mack? I know she, I believe, was found out in Vanderbilt in a similar way that she was murdered.
So you have, you know, and if you go back to that document, they talk about DS or dump sites in Mill Road, Halsey Manor Road and Mill Road, it intersects with each other. So, and if you look at the method of the crime scene, very similar to Jessica Taylor, that's what we could say now. We'll continue to work the case, and you know, if we're able to develop more information and get to the point where we can charge it, we'll talk about it. You had a real question?
Yes, I was wondering, you mentioned that book. Did Heuermann have that book in his?
So he references specific page numbers in the doc, or specific page numbers are represented in the document, which match up to a particular edition of the Mindhunter book. The Mindhunter book was not found in Heuermann's house, but there was another serial killer book written by John Douglas found in his house, and I think that's in the bail document.
I just think, obviously, you probably knew this already, but uncovering a lot of new details that we didn't know, as far as dismemberment, that he was younger when he allegedly killed, that, you know, of course, this document is explosive. Just talk to me, looking at the bigger picture profile of a serial killer, what was investigators, your thoughts when you were uncovering these new sort of details that...
We had no thoughts. You know, we look at the evidence and we follow the evidence. We know that criminals in general, people in general, their modus operandi change through the course of their life. You know, obviously there was no dismemberment with regard to the original Gilgo 4, but there is with regard to, unfortunately, Ms. Taylor. So, you know, it's just, and again, everyone says, you know, are you expanding the investigation? And you know, we're doing it under the auspices of the Gilgo Task Force. But each new case that we look at, each new crime scene we look at it independent of everything, and then we make a determination. You know, where does that evidence leads us? Does it lead us to one particular suspect or another particular suspect? But we don't, you know, get a list and say, okay, you know, we're gonna automatically assume that certain people committed certain crimes. That's not the way to do it. That's not the way we do it. We look at and again, you know, in the bail document, you talk about, if you want to know, and this is from John Douglas's book that the document quotes, if you want to know who the painter is, look at the painting. And that is something that Douglas used to tell his investigators, and that pertains specifically to, if you want to know who committed the crime, look at the crime scene and the condition of the victim. And again, if you do that in this case, we would allege that the crime scene and the victim was matched very much with a lot of, first off, the document that we found, and also a lot of the defendant's internet activities and the bondage and torture type of pornography that he was interested in obsessively searching.
Do you believe at this point that the murders were committed in his house? And could you also talk about the note he put in his in that document that was referenced in court?
I'm familiar with the note. I'm sorry.
There was I thought the ADA talked about something about, he said, if you do certain things equals more playtime.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So you know, that is referenced. What is the specific quote was? Okay, more rest, more playtime. And so basically, what he's talking about is, well, what the allegation and what we would allege is the more rested, you know, the participants are, the more you can get done. And he also talks about, or the document also talks about crime scene, and if you're sleepy and spending too much time in a crime scene, or your lack of sleep, your chances of making mistakes increase. So again, there's a lot of evincing of intent in that document.
And what about where these murders took place? Any
So there's, you know, under you know, some of the considerations was in the document, it writes about tape not good, use push pins, and then once we received that document, we went back into the house and looking at the paneling in the downstairs basement area, we were able to look at it through infrared light. We were to establish a cordon off area where adhesive had been placed. So we're gonna make certain arguments with regard to that at the time of trial. We also found an area where there were push pins into the drop ceiling.
Does he make any specific references to victims in the manifesto?
There's a T1, a T1 and T2. We would argue that stands for target 1 and target 2. Target 1, it says Megan, with a question mark, and target 2, it says black, and then in parentheses unknown, I believe. You could look at the bail document. That pertains to specific victims. If you look at the timing of it, it wouldn't seem to pertain to Megan Waterman because it's too early in time. There is also a reference to phone numbers of potential victims. We've searched, and we usually block out our phone numbers. We kept that in the document because we've come to an impasse with regard to those phone numbers. So if any members of the public have information with regard to those phone numbers, we would certainly be receptive to receive that.
So Valerie Mack, her death was mentioned twice in this latest bail document. Is Rex officially a suspect in Valerie Mack's death?
I think that would be fair to say, yeah.
That's fair to say.
And isn't Mill Road where her remains were found?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Taylor was closer to the
Valerie Mack was, if you go down, you have Halsey Manor Road, and then Mill Road is like further, like as you said, away from the expressway, I believe, or the exit to the expressway. But in that same area, and Valerie Mack was a little bit further into the woods.
Ray, have you found any evidence at all about what he might have been up to in the last decade or so? Or did he just stop in 2010? How many other missing persons cases or unsolved crimes do you now have to look at, given where you are?
So the quick answer to that, yes, we have. We're still developing that, and obviously, none of that is actionable. And with regard to the missing cases, we're looking at all of them, and but we're looking at them not necessarily in the context of any particular defendant, including this one. We're looking at them separate and apart as missing cases, and with the universe of information that we have, not only in this case but other cases, how can we work towards solving some of these cold cases?
That's 30 years of crime.
Yes.
Did the new search of North Sea uncover any evidence that has helped the case?
So I would say that it was, as I've said all along, it's a necessary investigative step. It's a huge area, and we felt that we needed to do that at some point in time. We wanted to do it before the summer, and the brush got real thick. So we didn't know logistically how we were going to do it. We knew it was going to be difficult, but you don't not do something because it's difficult. And again, fortunately, our partners in the New York State Police, the Suffolk County Police as always, and the NYPD, their canine units went out and they did a fantastic job. We have so much gratitude to them for helping us out, but no new bodies were found.
Mr. Tierney, just following up on Greg's question, do you believe both the search going on in the basement with what you found in the manifesto, that the basement was a location where the crimes could have been committed?
So again, it doesn't matter what I believe, it matters what we can prove. This is a significant investigative step. This was a significant investigative finding, and we'll continue to develop those things. We'll get to you next. I'm sorry. Could you say that again? Whoever said what they said, could you say? Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering, in the basement,
Yeah.
there was the new search, were there any specific findings that could relate to actual blood, hair, human remains of any kind?
Well, as we've said all along, if you look at the DNA evidence and the trace evidence that we've done, it doesn't happen overnight. So there's additional testing that we're undergoing. We just have to see the results of that. Well, you always see suspicious things, but in any case. But is it is it a stain of something benign, or is it an investigatively significant stain? Only our forensic scientists can tell that after a lot of work.
Thank you so much. Could you share any of the trophies that you found from the investigation?
Well, we've in our bail letter, and we're pretty much constrained by our bail letter to what we could publicly disclose. We found other information. which will be disclosed at the time of trial. So we're not gonna get into it, and that's not to say they exist. We're just not gonna get into it. We can't. Ethically, I'm really enjoying from talking about it.
Can you tell us when the document on the laptop was first discovered, and is that what prompted the research of the house recently?
Again, you know, in any effective investigation, it's never just one thing. Certainly that was something that was significant and led us in among other things in that direction. That document, I believe, we recovered it in March here. So fairly recently, and certainly given the history of the sprawling history of this case.
And you
Go ahead.
said he had a lot of images and videos of torture porn on his devices. Were any of them his own victims?
We saw no evidence of that.
Could you speak about his profile? Like, was one set of murders different from another set, and does that indicate that he was sort of changing his tactics over the years, or is this all consistent when you look at all the evidence so far?
Well, I think if you look at a macro view or a micro view, you know, these are, you know, young women tragically lost their lives and were murdered as a result of a person who meticulously planned their murders. You know, if you look at the earlier as opposed to the later murder, it does appear that there was some changes. You know, exactly what happened with regard to the Gilgo 4, we're foreclosed about knowing a lot of that stuff because they were skeletonized. Jessica and Sandra were more recently found, so we were able to glean more information from the crime scene. So, you know, I guess it just depends what your perspective is on with regard to all that.
Was the March 7th discovery of the Word document the evidence that caused the second search of the house?
Well, as I think I previously, it was a impetus, but, you know, in any good investigation, you know, there's usually a number of different things that cause that.
Was that the main one?
I would say it was a significant one, and it was also an impetus to go back out into those areas and search with the dogs.
In Manorville?
And Manorville and North Sea and every place else we went.
With these allegations that happened probably in '93, it could open the possibility of other murders like Karen Vergata or other people who have been killed?
So as we said, Karen Vergata, her remains were found partially in Jones Beach and partially in, I think, by Atlantic Beach, across from Blue Point on Fire Island. So, you know, all those cases, every person who was tragically murdered in Suffolk County, they're in play.
Ray, can you say a quick word about how you plan to bring this to trial? Are you gonna, is there like a cutoff point where you're just gonna try the 6, or you're just gonna keep going and eventually put them on trial?
So we're not gonna stop. We can't stop. We owe that to the victims. That's the least we can do. So you know, we understand we have a court case. We understand we'll go forward with that, but we're not gonna stop. So however that works, however we need to do that, we're gonna do it. We have a great team. We have a great team of investigators. We have a great team of prosecutors, and you do what you have to do in this business. We will get it done. It's, you know, it's daunting. There's a lot, but we'll get it done.
Are you still going through those dozens of digital devices?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's like, just reading off just gives, and a lot of them are encrypted, so that, you know, when you have an encrypted device, that attempt to get in is ongoing. You know, you're trying to crack the code, so to speak, so that's an ongoing effort.
Has there been any attempt?
You know, I'm not going to discuss. I'm not going to discuss that again because my speculation, my thoughts don't matter. What I can prove in court, speak through an indictment. I will talk about these 6 because, you know, these are allegations at this point. We look forward to proving those allegations, but they are mere allegations at this point.
Has there been any attempts recently to talk to Rex or his lawyers and say, hey, look, can you just tell us who you killed? And just ask him to come forward?
So I am, you know, he's represented by company counsel. I cannot ethically reach out to the defendant, so I wouldn't, and even if I was inclined, I cannot. So we'll speak through his attorney, and, you know, there's in any case, you know, there's always a dialogue between the defense and the prosecution, or at least there should be. And, you know, a myriad of topics are discussed on a daily basis, which should remain private between the parties.
Has any of the evidence that you found so far, that you might have another suspect question, whether someone who lived him or a family member or something, could be someone on your radar?
So if you look at the evidence in this case, and you know, it points that the defendant acted alone, and then if you look at that planning document, that makes it even more apparent that this is the 6 charged cases were meticulously planned, and they were done at a time when the defendant knew he would have both access to the victims and other people would not be around.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe the victims are going to speak, so we're going to give some of the victims, whoever likes to speak, the opportunity to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. I'm attorney Gloria Allred. I represent the family of one of the latest victims for whom there has been an indictment of the defendant, and that is Jessica Taylor. I am the only attorney representing the family of Jessica Taylor and the only one authorized to speak about Jessica Taylor. In addition, I represent the families of 3 other victims, Megan and Melissa and Maureen. Some of the family members of those other victims are also present today, so I'd ask you just to raise your hand if you are a family member of Megan, a family or friend of Melissa, and a family member or friend of Maureen. With me for Jessica Taylor is Jessica's mom, Elizabeth Backheel, and she, under the circumstances, has asked me to read her statement. Following this statement, Jasmine Robinson, who is the cousin of Jessica, will read her statement. I also have and will show you 2 photos of Jessica. This is a statement of Jessica's mom, Elizabeth Backheel. Jessica was my daughter. She was loving and compassionate and so funny. She loved to make people laugh. She could always make people laugh. She tried very hard in school. Jessica had 2 brothers, and they would always play together. She and her brothers were very close. Jessica loved riding her bike. She loved playing board games, Monopoly, Chutes and Ladders, Candyland. She loved playing cards, especially spades and rummy. She loved cartoons. She loved to sing. She would sing along with the radio and was in the choir at church. She loved to cuddle with me and her brothers when she was younger. They would pile on the couch and watch TV together. I miss how she called me Mommy and Mama. It's a tragedy she never had children. Jessica would have made a great mother. She loved kids and loved working with them. She worked in the inner city with the kids in summer camp as an aide. She loved supporting kids and helping to take care of them. My family and I would like to thank the law enforcement and the district attorney's office for all of their hard and diligent work on my daughter Jessica's case. Jessica, my darling daughter, you will never be forgotten. You will always be missed. You will forever be in our hearts. And this is a photo of Jessica when she was how old? 5 or 6 years old.
Gloria.
And 16. This is a photo of Jessica when she was approximately 16 years old. And this is her mom's favorite photo. I will have a copy of Elizabeth's statement available after the press conference for you. And in addition, I'll have the photos up here. And now I would like to introduce Jasmine Robinson, Jessica's cousin. And also, if you would be kind enough to raise your hand, also present is another cousin of Jessica who will not make a statement, and that is Violet Swagger. Violet, would you be kind enough just to raise your hand, please? Thank you. Best couldn't hear you.
Can you just spell her mother's name for us?
Oh, her mother's name is on here, but I'm happy to spell it. Elizabeth Bacchiel, capital B-A-C-Z-K-I-E-L. Thank you for asking. Jasmine.
Jessica was a beautiful person. Simple memories, such as sitting down to dinner together, drawing pictures, dancing, jump rope, and sleepovers with her and my sister, are memories that I cherish. I was lucky to share my childhood with her, and I wish every day that we got the chance to create more memories. When I think of her, I see her smile first, big and bright, lighting up her face, beaming through her beautiful eyes. Jess was somebody that I looked up to. She was a force, one of the strongest women that I know, with a heart of gold. She was, and still is, loved immeasurably. When her life was stolen, a light went out. She is forever missed. This year has been 21 years since she was taken from us, longer than the chance that she got to be alive. I can't express what this day means after waiting and hoping for answers. I'm incredibly grateful to the entire task force for the dedication and integrity that they have provided and put into this investigation. I have full faith that they will continue to provide answers for other victims and their families.
They will not be taking questions, but if you have a few for me, feel free to ask.
Jasmine's name, please?
Pardon me, I couldn't hear.
Can you just, Jasmine, spell her name, please?
Yes, Jasmine Robinson, Jasmine Robinson, Robinson.
Ms. Allra, just their reaction, if you can, to finding out about, this new indictment.
Obviously, it's very difficult for them emotionally. They've been waiting 21 years for answers. And they're hoping that justice is on its way.
What was it like to sit in the same courtroom as Heuermann?
They were present, that is, Jasmine, Elizabeth, and Violet were present in court with me this morning. It was difficult for them to see the person who was accused of murdering, second-degree murder of their loved one, but they reached down inside of themselves and found the courage to be there because they are the voice of Jessica. They have the memories that they carry of Jessica, and they want to be there for Jessica, and that's why they were there.
Gloria, would any of your other clients from the Brainerd Barnes family want to share their thoughts at this time?
Does anyone have any further thoughts? No, no one is going to make an additional statement this morning or after the press conference, but thank you for asking. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, your other clients from who we met the last time, the Brainerd Barnes family, were asking about that.
Yeah, they have no additional statement at this time because they want the focus to be on Jessica today, which is understandable, but they are here in support of Jessica as well as their family member for whom there has also been an indictment.
Could you spell Violet Swagger's name for us, please?
Could you please repeat your question a little more
Could you spell
loudly?
Violet Swagger's name, please? Violet Swagger. Could you spell?
Yeah, Violet Swagger. V-I-O-L-E-T. Swagger. S-W-A-G-E-R. That's correct. Anything further?
Thank you.
Okay, then in that case, as I say, I will have a copy of Jasmine's statement, a copy of Elizabeth's statement. My contact information is at the top of the statement.
Are you serious?
What?
Breaking news from the Stream Center. Here's JB Biunno.
Investigators discover a motherlode of forensic and digital evidence laying out in, quote, excruciating detail how prosecutors believe alleged serial killer Rex Heuermann methodically killed at least 6 women over a time span of more than 3 decades. Welcome back into the Stream Center, folks. I want to take you just back out really quickly live, if I may, to what's the touchscreen here? Let's just show you inside the room as people are grabbing statements from attorney Gloria Allred. And if you heard some commotion there at the end of the press conference, it was some people that were going up to the podium and blocking the shot of some of the hugs that were being exchanged there, hugs that are long overdue for the family and friends of Jessica Taylor. So, as we have a reporter here in the foreground, let's come back here live and explain what we have discovered. It is all in this bail application, this document that has now made its way onto social media, which goes into detail as to how investigators arrived at the 2 second-degree murder charges that have been filed against Rex Heuermann, and how it spells out and gets us closer to justice for the families of the two latest victims in the Gilgo case, that being Jessica Taylor and Sandra Castilla. So it's we are dealing with accusations here that are obviously just the stuff of pure evil, the stuff of nightmares. And so we'll go into this here a little bit. We ran a poll on social media asking folks if they would like for us to go through the document itself, the bail application, some of the evidence that was gathered, because the evidence, as you go through this document, it just gets more and more disturbing to the point where it's chilling. I don't know other words to describe it, to tell you the truth. As I was trying to do a combination of reading as I was listening to Tierney, and as we go through the document, it's just it is truly the stuff of nightmares. And so we're not going to get into the document just yet, but this is the first of several warnings of viewer discretion being advised to our audience, because we are going to get into some of the details here, some of the evidence that has been gathered by investigators against Heuermann, and it is difficult to read. It is difficult to comprehend that somebody is capable of such acts. So we'll go through some of the highlights of the press conference, and then afterwards, what we will do. Take some questions, and then we'll go through the document. We'll try to do this as expeditiously as possible. So it begins with a massive amount of forensic evidence. And I'm reading here in the document, a male hair for Sandra Castilla, a male hair underneath Jessica Taylor. I mean, these are things that have on two different types of DNA testing. We're talking about just overwhelmingly, as you hear Tierney describe, like a number that they can't even fit on a page. They can't even fit on a document. Like 7.9 trillion times more likely to come from an individual with an identical genetic profile as actually in this case as the wife, Asa Ellerup. We'll get into the wife here because I know a lot of questions in the chat about that. And then just the mountain of digital evidence. Let's go through this one more time. Everybody who's been following all of our Idaho streams about Koberger, right? We're talking about 51 terabytes of evidence. That's difficult for people to comprehend. What is a terabyte? Well, a terabyte could be, depending on compression rate, it could be, 40 movies, depending on how long they are and how compressed they are, or it could be 20 million pages. It's difficult it's all based on how compressed the data is. A terabyte doesn't mean a whole lot to people. This list will mean something to people. 27 computers, 58 hard drives, 46 cell phones, 17 tablets, 42 USB devices, 4 GPS devices, SIM cards, CDs, and floppy disks. We're talking about a mountain of digital evidence that Tierney, you heard there at the end, say that they are still going through. I'm sure in Idaho and now in New York, there's a parallel there about going through just an endless amount, what seems to be an endless amount of digital evidence. That is something that could take months, if not years. But going through this, one of the discoveries that was made was violent torture pornography, and some of the parallels that have been drawn between some of the alleged media that was on those devices discovered to be in Heuermann's possession, and some of the remains that were discovered among the victims in this case. And a lot of this is going to be played out more at trial. A lot of the gaps will get filled in, and there will be more elaborating done to describe, okay, for example, how a piece of violent torture pornography, which just in and of itself is the stuff of pure evil, right? To have that, and then for there to be a parallel to a victim in this case, a prosecutor will, and with witness testimony, will go through exactly how those two line up and why that is particularly relevant in the case of a particular victim. But then you get to the Word doc titled HK 2002 to 2004, a document that Tierney says was attempted to be erased, was locally created on a machine that on a digital device that Heuermann had, but that was retrieved thanks to the work of digital forensics. And the stuff in this document, we're going to go through it again. This is my second time. Viewer discretion advised, because it is terrible. I don't even know the word anymore. Some important notes before we answer. We're going to do a quick Q&A before we go to the documents. Heuermann is said to have acted alone. Everything that they have gathered says that he acted alone. There was a John Douglas book or a couple of books that Heuermann allegedly used. I don't know if this was the word that was used, but to draw inspiration, as Tierney was alluding to, again, finding out more about not only the acts that Heuermann is alleged to have committed, but also how he was able to get away with those acts, allegedly, for a period of more than 30 years. How to cover your tracks. That's all in this document. A planning document, not just to get not just to commit heinous acts, but to get away with those acts. That's what these allegations are all about in this document we're about to go through. But I want to give everybody just one more opportunity to file in some questions. I don't want to save the Q&A for the end, because there are going to be some people in our comment section that are not going to want to hear these details. And I just want to try to get to as many questions as I can now before we go into the planning document. Seriously, hashtag AJB, how many total are they suspecting in all states? Right now, it's very clear that investigators have their hands full with just one section of New York, one county of New York, Suffolk County, which is the easternmost county on Long Island, an area I know well. I've talked about it in the past. I grew up in Queens and then Long Island. I did not grow up in Suffolk County, but I'm very familiar with Suffolk County. I've never really gone to Gilgo Beach, to tell you the truth. I've driven on Ocean Parkway in the past, actually I think multiple times, but I've never actually made it to Gilgo Beach. But I'm very familiar with Long Island. I'm very familiar with Massapequa Park. I've been there multiple times in my life. It's one of the many, suburban towns on Long Island in Suffolk County. So it would appear that investigators have a whole lot just to get through as far as the local cases, but it is relevant. Tierney said that the FBI is involved. So anything that provides a DNA hit that connects to another case, I've been seeing people in the comment section talking about the possibility of cases being elsewhere outside of New York State. When you're dealing with these types of allegations, you could never just rule out, that these acts were just committed in one area, in one section of the world. Could there be more victims elsewhere? I'm sure that's entirely possible, but that would make it a federal, effort, and the FBI is involved. Can't say too much more beyond that, but clearly, with there being more victims in this case and missing persons cases on Long Island dating back many, many years, I would say that Suffolk County investigators are still just combing through the New York aspect of this case. Sue, hashtag or at HeyJB, was the wife invested? Did she know anything? I'm going to read the most recent statement from Asa Ellerup. That is the, has the divorce been finalized? She filed for divorce days after Heuermann was arrested on the streets of New York City. I don't know if I haven't seen anything if the divorce is final, and divorcing somebody who is behind bars on murder charges is, I'm sure, a very complicated thing. I would imagine that going through a divorce, I would imagine is difficult in and of itself. When you're trying to do a divorce and your spouse is behind bars, that's probably going to make it more complicated. So I don't know if the divorce is done yet, but what I do have is the statement from Asa, and it reads as follows: "Nobody deserves to die in that manner. I will listen to all of the evidence and withhold judgment until the end of trial. I have given Rex the benefit of the doubt, as we all deserve," end quote. That's what I have. I think that was from March of this year. And you heard there that from Tierney that Heuermann is accused of going to extraordinary lengths to conceal his acts and to make sure that no one else knew of them. That includes his family. You heard there, I believe earlier in the press conference, about him navigating his alleged crimes around travel within his own household so that there wouldn't be suspicions raised, within his inner circle. People are in disbelief in the comments. I read your comments. That's what I do here in the Stream Center. That's part of my job. I read your comments. People are in complete disbelief that you could be married to somebody who is accused of such horrific acts, such heinous murders, and not know anything or suspect anything. I get that. But at the same time, when we go through, reserve judgment for when we go through this document, and you will see just how meticulous Heuermann is alleged to have been in planning out these murders and then going to extraordinary lengths to conceal any evidence that they even existed. We'll go through 2 or 3 more, then one more time we will put out a warning to our audience and go through the document. Again, use hashtag HeyJB if you want to get my attention. Or you can go to www.heyjb.live to submit a VIP comment. And if you do that, it just kind of sticks on my screen. It doesn't scroll away. So, reading here. Yeah, as far as homicides outside of New York, I'm only aware of what's been going on with the New York case. So a lot of questions being asked about, South Carolina. I see here in the comment section. I'm only aware of what's been going on in New York, which, believe me, and you can see here, has been enough to keep all of our hands full. But if I hear anything about another jurisdiction, I'll absolutely pass it along on social media. Laura, are they still searching the home or are they finished? They've gone into the home a series of times. And they were most recently there last month. And according to sources that News 12 talked with, that they were going into the basement and perhaps behind some wood paneling where they made some more discoveries. Wood paneling would lead us to believe, of course, that the suspect in this case went to a certain amount of effort to conceal evidence in this case. Beachy wants to know what my expertise is. I am not a lawyer. I am not a law enforcement expert. I am a humble journalist who values what you have to say and animates your comments and questions because I believe in interactive journalism, and I believe that you should have a voice, and I believe that sometimes the best questions come from people watching at home, and that's why I do what I do. So the news format here is a little bit different. I've covered a lot of cases involving crime, but I am not by no means a law enforcement expert. That's why I bring people onto streams, and I just do my very best to report facts and provide content, not opinion, provide context when appropriate, when you guys are asking questions about some of the cases that we follow. One more question, and then we will move on. Absurdity. That's a great username. Hashtag HeyJB. It's easy to blame the wife for being complicit, but wasn't she away during each killing? I don't know if she's away during each one, but that, like each one of the 6, I can't definitively state that, but it certainly sounds that way, absurdity. And with that, I'm going to go to San Quentin, #HJB. This whole story is totally grotesque, to be honest. And that leads us right to this next portion of the live stream. We're going to go through this document, okay? We ran a poll. 10%, or I think it was around 8 to 10% of our audience did not, did not want to go through the document here, and that is totally understandable given the subject matter. So with that said, want to be clear. If you're somebody who does not want to know the horrific allegations in this case, by no means are you being forced to watch this content. I would encourage you. There will be more live streams. We will have more of an opportunity, but we're now entering a phase of this live stream where things are going to get pretty graphic, pretty disturbing. And for those who have, I am always being mindful of those, of the experiences that those in our comment section have had. I'm talking about victims of assault and other horrific crimes in this world. This is a trigger warning. So we're going to go through the document a little bit, and we'll save some of the worst stuff for a little bit later on in the document. Yeah, moderators, if you could please just routinely encourage that this is a trigger warning and viewer discretion is advised, because we're now going to go through it. And some of the stuff here, some of the evidence is really, really difficult to read, let alone speak out and verbalize. So let's get to that. And hopefully I've done a good enough job articulating that, again, viewer discretion is advised. Okay, so let's bring up the oh, actually, I'm sorry. Wait, apologies. We saw it on the live stream really quickly. I just want to show these pictures because it always comes back to victims. And I wanted to do this right off the top, but apologies. I got into some of the facts and some of the notes. You're looking here at the 2 victims in this case. They were real people. They had family. They were loved. Clearly Jessica Taylor's family still just affected by this. I would imagine that for Sandra's family, this is still gut-wrenching to this very day, but at least they have some hope that justice will be served, hopefully in the not-too-distant future. But these are the people that we are talking about. They're not just names on a page, okay? They're not just characters in a story that gets told. They were real people, and they died too young, and they died a long time ago. We're talking 1993 and 2003. So just a reminder that we're talking about real people here, and we always advocate for victims on this, and I hope sincerely that that these families and loved ones of Jessica and Sandra get justice. All right, and with that, let's get to the document. One more time, viewer discretion is advised. Okay, so we're scrolling down here to page 19. And this goes into the forensics, and you can see here the victim and then the corresponding designation. So Sandra with a male hair that was found on her remains. You go down 2 rows, Jessica, male hair found underneath Taylor, and then you see the mitochondrial DNA results and the nuclear SNP DNA results. These are 2 different types of standards and basically different types of lab work that get done when it comes to DNA. And the results are different, it reminds me of some high school math on that rightmost column, because we're getting into a level of exponential numbers that are hard to quantify and as you heard Tierney say, fit on one page. But the DNA test results are overwhelmingly pointing to Heuermann, or as you see there on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, identical genetic profile as his wife, Asa Ellerup, 7.9 trillion times more likely to come from an individual with the identical genetic profile as Asa Ellerup. So these are some of the, now that doesn't make her an accomplice in any way. These are just some of the methods that were used and some of the DNA samples that were gathered to get to this point. and help establish a full picture when it comes to the forensics in this case. You see here, it's not just Sandra and Jessica, the two new, most recently named victims in this case. You also have the Gilgo Four, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello being represented here as well. So we're going to scroll down here and move on to some more of the actual evidence. And I'm just trying to get my page right because, okay, this is where it gets. All right, so we're going to go through this. As detailed in Exhibit A, following Heuermann's arrest, numerous search warrants were executed at the target residence, which culminated in the seizure of over 350 electronic devices. We went over them earlier. That's a lot of electronics. I'm an electronics dork, and I'm telling you, I haven't had 46 cell phones in my life. I may have had 42 USB devices because that's very vague. 27 computers? Maybe. Dozens of hard drives? I've had maybe, I don't know, to keep news footage. I've had like 6 to 10 in my life, maybe. To have 40, or how many? 58 of them is, that's a number that jumps off the page for sure. Scrolling down here, the pornographic images accessed by Heuermann include, but are not limited to, breast mutilation, vaginal torture, sex substitution, the sexualization of decapitated women, bondage, and whipping, which notably and largely coincide with how the remains of Sandra Costilla, Jessica Taylor, and Valerie Mack were discovered. Again, this is some of the trigger warnings that we were talking about. We're talking about pornographic material that is deeply disturbing and in and of itself would warrant charges being filed. And charges that would send you to prison for a very long time, or a relatively long time, depending on the jurisdiction, depending on the state that is prosecuting the case. Moving down here, they're doing some basic definitions. Okay, here we go. A forensic analysis of the HK 2002-04 document reveals that it was not only a locally created draft, i.e. not downloaded from the internet, but also recovered from a hard drive that indicates it was utilized by Heuermann himself. While the original document appears to have been created in 2000, based on its original title, this iteration of the word document appears to have been created and modified between 2001 and 2002. Based on the foregoing and the facts set forth, the task force members believe 2000 or 2002 to be a reference to calendar years. Okay, this is all pretty obvious. The Microsoft Word document, let me go back. The task force members also believe, based on the foregoing and the facts set forth, the Microsoft Word document to be a planning document, in quotes there, utilized by Heuermann to methodically blueprint and plan out his kills. Hereinafter references the HK planning document. And then, okay, now here's an excerpt from the planning document. Okay. The HK planning document begins with a 4-category section with the underlined headings of problem supplies, DS, and TRG. We're going to go through what these acronyms mean. You can see it here on your screen, folks. Heuermann is describing potential problems. Heuermann allegedly, I want to make sure I catch myself. Heuermann allegedly describing potential problems that could arise when it comes to carrying out these acts. Things like DNA, tire marks, blood stains, fingerprints, photos, being stopped by police, fingerprints inside his gloves, hair and fiber. Then he goes into a list of supplies. Booties, rope and cord, a foam drain cleaner, photo film, tarps, medical gloves, bags, tape, large electrical clips. Some of the supplies that he allegedly listed. Under DS, and I'm trying to remember, I believe DS is dumpster sites. I believe that's what that is. Potentially, he lists Mill Road, and he puts in parentheses, next time recon dumpster locations. And then he puts TRG. I know what TRG is. TRG is going to be Target. TRG, he puts Megan, ? Small is good, and then TUNK black. We'll read this now, the explanation in the following paragraph. Based on the Gilgo Homicide Task Force's training and experience, the members believe problems to be a guide on issues to avoid apprehension, Supplies to be a reference to what supplies are needed to carry out the serial murders or to avoid apprehension or to avoid leaving behind DNA evidence. The DS heading appears to be an acronym for dump site. And then, of course, TRG is going to be, appears to be a reference for target or victim. Moving down here. With regards to the DS section of the document, it is important to note that the human remains of Jessica Taylor discovered in 2003, as well as the remains of Valerie Mack discovered in 2000, were dumped in 2 locations. One of those locations being the vicinity of Mill Road, which is listed as DS1 Mill Road in the above word document. On March 29th, 2011, Miss Taylor's torso, skull, and hands recovered near Ocean Parkway, i.e. the second dump site. On April 4th, 2011, Miss Mack's skull, hands, and right foot were also recovered near Ocean Parkway, also a second quote-unquote dump site. The recent discovery of this document prompted the April 2024 cadaver search of the Manorville area, which did not yield the recovery of additional sets of human remains, thereby reinforcing the task force members' belief that the HK planning document refers to Heuermann's preparations for either Jessica Taylor and/or Valerie Mack. Okay, we're getting now deeper down to some of the disturbing evidence here. Once again, viewer discretion is advised, and thank you to our moderators for putting that out on YouTube. The HK planning document on Heuermann's computer then delves into a 3-category section with the headings of pre-prep, prep, and post-event. Let's just kind of look at this boxed off section for a second. 3 columns: pre-prep, prep, and post-event. Under pre-prep, vehicle inspection, recon, weather report, recon video cameras. Under the prep column, set up stage, holding area, build table, crossbar and hardpoint. Post-event column, destroy file, change tires, burn gloves, dispose of pics, and have stories set. This, I'm going to go through a little bit here of the explaining paragraph that follows this exhibit, but this is pretty self-explanatory, is it not? The Gilgo Homicide Task Force members believe pre-prep to be a guide on steps taken in advance of homicide. Yes. Prep, on the other hand, referring to steps taken closer in time to homicide, like setting up a staging area, and specifically prep, 5 entries: set up stage, holding area, build table, crossbar, and hardpoint. The Gilgo Homicide Task Force members are aware that a crossbar is often placed underneath tables to provide further structural support for heavier objects placed on a table. Additionally, the task force members are also aware that a quote-unquote hard point refers in the field of sexual suspension bondage to a fixed attachment point in the ceiling that supports the weight of an individual being suspended off of the ground, which is corroborated by Heuermann's significant interest in pornography, where the subject is either suspended, tortured, bound to a table, decapitated, and/or their breasts are mutilated, which is consistent with the foregoing notions regarding suspension, as well as the condition of the victims described herein. Yeah, that's as disturbing as it gets, you guys. Additionally, post-event refers to a checklist of tasks following the event or homicide to avoid apprehension. The HK planning document continues to further expand on preparatory measures such as specific recon steps taken, packaging for transport, and steps to inhibit victim identification and avoid leaving behind DNA evidence. Recon reports, vidcams on LIE 112 to 110, vidcams on, again, growing up on Long Island, I know SS is Southern State Parkway. That's the main parkway, the main highway where I grew up, Southern State Parkway. To Route 231, to exit 30 to 10, puts there old on the first 2 points, actually all 3 points. Takedown/pickup. Hunt too long. Seen an area too long. Remember, don't charge gas. Recon for vidcams in pickup area next time. I mean, he's doing recon work in these areas. He's scouting. He's following up. He's noting and taking notes specifically on particular areas and certain highways. Again, these extremely difficult, or extremely methodical details that describe how far he went to carry out these crimes, allegedly. All right, body prep, washing the body, removing trace DNA, removing marks from torture, remove head and hands, package for transport. There's some of the bullet points there. Dispose of the following: tools and device, drop clothes, wipes and towels, burn gloves, destroy book and computer files. And it's worth noting that Heuermann did attempt to delete this file, but advanced digital forensics was able to recover. You think you delete a file because you delete it, and even if you go as far to delete it out of your recycle bin, if for Windows users, you think that really gets rid of that document. And I would imagine in some cases there is permanent deletion, but other cases it's not as simple as what you see in the UI of your device. The body prep section above also includes a note to remove head and hands, which clearly clearly relates to the condition of Jessica Taylor and Valerie Mack's remains, as both victims were decapitated and dismembered at their arms below their elbows. Additionally, each of these victims' remains, as well as the remains of the Gilgo Four, were indeed packaged for transport. They continue to go over certain notes from the exhibit, and then they put here there's a new section here of this planning document that Heuermann is alleged to have authored. Things to remember: sound travels. Get sleep before hunt. Too tired creates problems. Hit harder. Too many hits to take down. Consider a hit to the face or neck next time for takedown. Next time is highlighted here because clearly he is referencing a particular act and trying to improve for next time. You heard Tierney made this, he isolated this one bullet point in the press conference. More sleep and noise control equals more playtime. Talking about, and Tierney's interpretation, or at least the investigation's interpretation of this, is that allowing a victim who is being held against their will and being tortured more sleep gives him more time to carry out these heinous acts, which is just, again, the stuff of nightmares. Use push pins to hang drop clothes from ceiling, not tape. Another exhibit here. Hunt too long, seen an area too long. Remember, don't charge gas. Recon for vid cams in pickup area next time, and they highlight that. And they say, finally, the HK planning document on Heuermann's laptop computer includes a notes section. See embedded image below. Spur of the moment. Cover: Stockholm Syndrome. The more you do, the more clues you give. Look at the quote-unquote painting. What, why, who? Originalized versus disoriginalized. And then page 162, sex substitution, page 163, he's referencing another document, it would appear. I think he is referencing, it says here that he is referencing the book authored by John Douglas, Mindhunter. That's why he lists page 162, 163, 175. They describe here the look at the painting section. Douglas notes that while he was still at the FBI, he always advises agents, if you want to understand the artist, in parentheses, the perpetrator, you have to look at the painting, the victim. So painting is victim. Accordingly, the note above contained in Heuermann's laptop computer to look at the painting yet again points to the aforementioned book as the source of Heuermann's commentary. Finally, the other notations contained in the HK planning document, i.e. spur of the moment, cover, Stockholm Syndrome, the more you do, the more clues you give, are also each contained in said book, all pointing to it as the source of Heuermann's notations. Here is another, I believe, another John Douglas book, The Cases That Haunt Us, that in the July search warrant execution, that was when they were able to find this book in his home office. And then they go into more and more details explaining each one, and they end with penalties if convicted on current charges. Defendant Rex A. Heuermann faces multiple sentences of life without parole. He's 60 years old. And one conviction would lead to him spending the rest of his life behind bars. No doubt. Or, I mean, it depends on a judge's sentence, of course, but that's going to end, well, at least me reading through the document. If there's any questions and we talk about this further and get more into this, we might still be referencing things that could be considered the subject of a trigger warning. However, that's the reading of the document. I paraphrased and kind of sped through it for the sake of time. Kind of hitting on some of the paragraphs that that required a little bit more of, you know, some work to highlight. And then others are just basic definitions or basic explanations that don't require much elaboration. So we're talking about a house of horrors with allegations of torture for enjoyment, and dismemberment and murder based on being inspired by or influenced by books and disturbing videos found on those hard drives of the worst type of content you could possibly imagine, torture, pornography. So this is going to be, when this goes to trial, I wonder, given, it's going to be really, obviously, I think we've really just scratched the surface of some of the details here. And I think when a prosecutor has to lay out the evidence to ensure that they are putting away the suspect that is accused of these crimes away for life and to get justice for the victims' families, I think it's going to go into even more detail. And I'm curious as to, what that is going to look like in a court of law. Just reading some of these details on a live stream can be, difficult. We just showed pictures of the victims. There they are there, the original Gilgo 4. Then we showed the pictures of Jessica and Sandra earlier. And now we're learning what their fates look like. And that is difficult for any human being to wrap their mind around. So, how this gets prosecuted and how all this evidence gets put forth is really, I'm curious as to how it all takes shape. But bottom line is, you can only hope that justice is in the future for these families and these loved ones of the 6, and that also too, that if the body count for Heuermann, we have allegations of 6 victims. If the body count goes beyond 6, that those families also get answers and justice, closure of some kind. But this is now, you're not talking about somebody who is alleged to have committed these crimes over a certain period of time, right? With other cases that we have covered, you're talking about usually a finite amount of time. With a serial killer, you're talking about what could be done over many, many years or even several decades. So every year that you add into the window of time when alleged acts could have occurred, you're creating exponential more work for investigators, more people to track down, more leads to follow up on, more understanding of the technology available at the time, the types of vehicles that were driven at that time, the type of roads that were utilized more often in those times. You're basically, for an investigator with the Suffolk County Police Department, you're trying to, with a murder that occurred in 1993, you're trying to get an understanding. You're developing a microcosm in time as to when these alleged crimes occurred to understand what it would have been like for the killer to execute at the time. The early 90s, you're not talking about having tremendous cell phone access. Yes, you have the very large type of cell phone back then that you would see like with Gordon Gekko in the movie Wall Street, like the big ones, right? Cell phones existed, but it wasn't like you could, text anybody. You couldn't access the internet. Maybe if you had a cellular phone at the time, you had access. That's just one example of an investigator trying to understand how a crime committed in the year 2010 would be dramatically different than one 17 years prior in the early 90s. So this is a very complex case. And I'm really, to no surprise, the questions that were asked to Tierney were outstanding. Sometimes I get a little frustrated as a reporter because sometimes the questions that get asked after a press conference with the limited time that they have for the Q&A, I'm thinking you need to ask this question. Why aren't you asking? But the reporters in the room, they've all covered this case. They're all pros, and they asked the right questions. One of which was, when do you proceed to trial? If this is an investigation that could take anywhere from 5 to 10 more, maybe even more years than that to fully get to the bottom of, you're talking about victim relatives that might be older and want to see justice now, not after 5 to 10 years. So there's a really delicate line that the district attorney's office has to walk on as far as getting justice expeditiously, but then at the same time ensuring that investigators have all the opportunities necessary to find out if there are more victims under this alleged suspect, under this alleged killer. Now, we know this. An investigation can be carried out simultaneously as a court case is being played out, and as you get closer to trial or even during trial, it happens all the time. However, when they take this to trial, what the strategy looks like, they're still going through the 27 computers, 58 hard drives, 46 cell phones, 17 tablets. They're still going through some of the digital evidence here. Who remembers floppy disks? That came up in the press conference today. You guys remember floppy disks? Chat? Hand emoji, raise hand if you remember floppy disks. I had a bunch of them, the 3.5-inch floppy disks. Couldn't put a whole lot on them. But the data that you'll be able to find on a floppy disk is minute compared to the data that you'd be able to find on a hard drive. Hard drive could have terabytes of information, countless pages of documents and history for each individual file that they find on that hard drive. You heard them say that the document itself, they were able to, through digital forensics, confirm that Heuermann himself, it was, well, as they put it, they said that it was locally originated. What that means is that he didn't download it. It wasn't a guide, a manifesto that came from a different, killer or someone who would have inspired or those actions. It was sourced locally to that machine, which leads them to believe, of course, that Heuermann is the author. So, where is the line? Yeah, I see a lot of hand raise emojis there. Where is the line? When do they go to trial? This is an active investigation. But if you're Jessica Taylor's mother and you saw her there, she looked so sweet. She was just standing there and she wanted to be visible, but she didn't want to speak, and she let Gloria Allred speak on her behalf. That's she wants justice for Jessica now. So it's hard. It's difficult. But we'll follow this case closely and see where this goes. And with that, I open it up to questions. Our interactive Q&A starts now. We've been taking questions, but, you know, we're going to take more before we wrap up the live stream around 1 o'clock. So about 10 minutes of questions, maybe a little bit more, depending on how many we get. Questions, how they work. You can use hashtag HeyJB, or you can go to www.heyjb.live if you want to submit a VIP comment, which kind of sticks on my screen. It's easier to find. The HeyJB comments here in the Stream Center, it's just a matter of when I'm looking at the screen because they scroll up so fast because I'm looking at the active YouTube and Facebook chat. So let's get some of the comments that are coming in. I saw one from Team Brittany, one of our great moderators. Will they try him for each victim individually? Absolutely. It's in each victim is associated with a set of charges or a singular charge. And that's how the justice system works, that you're able to get victim for each victim individually. And so that each victim's family and loved ones get their proverbial day in court, so to speak, or literal day in court. Let's see here. Stacy, hey JB, couldn't the judge propose that this trial could be without prejudice, meaning that they could inquire at a later date any other victims that come forward? I believe so, and it depends on the jurisdiction, depends on the judge. There's also multiple levels of the investigation. Like the FBI is working on this. You have Suffolk County Police, working on this. You would hope that the laws of New York would allow for basically the opportunity for the discovery of victims later on to also be included in the legal process. And I believe that absolutely can happen. Now, the where it gets tricky is the statute of limitations. And I'm trying to remember, because I was a reporter in New York. I'm very familiar with New York State statutes, but I'm trying to remember, because it's been a long time since I've been a reporter in New York State. Murder, the statute of limitations on murder in New York, after a quick Google search, is 40 years. So they've got a little bit of time. But if there are victims prior to the early 90s, then we're cutting it close here. Cutting it close. If the statute of limitations is indeed 40 years. All right, some other questions coming in. Some VIP comments that are coming in on heyjb.live. All of this while he had a family too, says Michelle. And then this is where it gets really complicated in the court of public opinion. Do you consider, and I'm asking this rhetorically, I'm not asking for an actual yes or no in the comments section, though I think people are going to answer it anyway. Do you consider Asa to be a victim? Is the wife a victim? This is a debate as old as the court of public opinion itself. The label of a victim, many people feel, should only be associated with the Sandra Castillas, the Jessica Taylors, the Maureen Brainerd Barnes, the Amber Costellos, the victims of these on the back end of these horrific crimes. Those four right there, plus the two women that have been added now. Do you consider a family member of a killer to be a victim? I was at an event recently where this exact conversation came up, and this is not a live stream for my opinion. It's not. I just provide context. But some people consider the family members who have been, Asa's world has been turned upside down, and there are going to be people that look at that and say, of course she's a victim Her world has been upended. Her life will never be the same. She'll never be able to go to the supermarket ever again and be able to live a normal life or anything resembling a normal life because of the actions of her spouse. Then you're going to have people, at least she has the life to be able to go to the supermarket. How dare you associate the word victim with somebody that wasn't, on the receiving end of murder or sexual abuse or any other horrific crime. So it's a very complicated, very, 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 very complicated conversation. Chris, if they charge a VIP comment to our website, if they charge him today and he gets a sentence, could he get tried again if they find more? Yeah, no, each case is going to be tried. Each case can be tried individually. We see that with cases all the time. As I understand it, again, not a lawyer, not a legal expert, but my understanding of New York law and just law in general is that, yes, that each victim and their families would be entitled to get their day in court. Nightmare says there's no statute of limitations on murder. You're wrong. Oh, that could be. Again, that was just a quick search on Google. I think, I'm not entirely sure. I believe that there is a statute of limitations on murder. Again, and it varies by jurisdiction. It varies by state. New York State statute of limitations for murder. Oh, no. Okay. Murder in the first degree. See? Okay. So this is interesting. And thank you to our commenter for clarifying. Murder in the first degree, and this is going to newyorkcourts.gov, is no time limit. Interesting. So, but it doesn't list on this site what a second degree murder charge, unless I'm missing it. Hold on, I'm looking. Yeah, no, full correction. And this is why we do what we do. So first degree murder, there is no statute of limitations time period that applies, but it doesn't list second degree murder charges. Why not? Find out. This whole Google AI thing, I'm still figuring out just how accurate it really is, and I probably should not rely on it. I didn't even know this was an AI result because it's so strange, the world we live in now. New York State does not have a statute of limitations for Class A felony offenses, including murder, so a person can be charged with a crime at any time. The statute of limitations for most other criminal offenses in New York are felonies 5 years, misdemeanors 2 years, petty offenses 1 year. So yeah, full correction. I don't know why the initial. Yeah, here it is. First and second degree, no limitations. Full, yeah. Apologies. Apologies to our audience. Reporters make mistakes too. And this is why you shouldn't ever rely on a quick Google search. But in the work that I do in the Stream Center, it's about, trying to get as many questions answered as possible. So doing my best. Let's see. Any other VIP comments coming in? Let's check those out. Oh, I want to bring up a tweet real quick as I reload some of the VIP comments. And this one comes from Jenna. Whoops, nope. Wrong comment. Here's the Jenna tweet. Here's Jenna. This is a reporter, Jenna Sundell. Shout out to her on Twitter. She was in the courtroom and says that Heuermann showed little to no visible reaction as the new charges were read this morning. I didn't note that earlier, but this tweet came in and I saw it on Twitter, and I wanted to just make sure that we noted that Heuermann was present in court this morning. There was no streamable feed. There was no video cameras allowed inside. But according to Jenna, that he did not have much of a reaction when the new charges were read aloud. Linnea, how many murders do they suspect him of having at the moment, or is it just these 6, or could there be more, and how many more? This is the prevailing belief is that there could be more. Not that there is more, but there very well could be more, and that's why the investigation is still active and still ongoing. A few more, and then we'll wrap up this live. This is a last call for questions and comments, whether they're VIP comments to heyjb.live or they just have hashtag heyjb in the comments section. Yeah, P&J question. Sorry, I'm just tuning in, but where does this investigation stand in regards to travels to other states? A lot of questions coming in about expanding beyond New York. That's going to make it federal, and that's why the FBI's involvement is so crucial. But also why extended DNA analysis is going to help potentially bridge the gap between other victims, if there are victims beyond the state of New York. Let me provide this context, if I may, and point this out. Based on the allegations and based on the bail application, the document that we read, Heuermann is believed to have been somebody who, based on the evidence and based on what investigators have gathered on his suspected crimes, he's somebody who was very much in control or seeking to be in control of every phase of his acts. The pre, the during, and the post. Making significant preparations beforehand. Carrying out the act with meticulous detail. And then in the post, going to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. You get the sense with all the recon work that he was doing, that he was very honed in on Suffolk County, very honed in on Long Island. And so it would be, in essence, I would imagine, to most investigators, retired or current, it would be a surprise for the pattern of behavior to deviate from being so locally focused. In essence, going into New Jersey, Connecticut, elsewhere, South Carolina, Florida, the other end of the country, and committing those acts. Because the wider you expand the geographical area, the less that is within your control and the more unfamiliar you are generally with that area. So I think it would be much of a, I would imagine it would be, I'm guessing, I'm totally guessing. I would imagine it would be a surprise to investigators if the acts went beyond Long Island or went beyond New York, given that he was so detail oriented based on the allegations and the evidence been presented. One or two more, and then we'll wrap this up. Make Me Laugh says, "You're okay. I love that you corrected yourself. Shows integrity." Yeah, I think that reporters make mistakes. We make mistakes. This is live. We're doing it live. When you do it live, you make mistakes. I would imagine that most people in this world, when they see somebody make a mistake and then they own up to that mistake, it's like, it's all right. But when you try to run away from that mistake, don't own up to the mistake, that's when you're trying to deceive people or cover your tracks. And the last thing that I ever want to do is be anything but open and transparent. I'm going to make mistakes on live stream. And I did with reading a premature Google result that was completely inaccurate. The Bethy Boop. Can Heuermann request a speedy trial? Everyone's got a right to a speedy trial, but I don't know where we are with. See, that's why I like having the court feed, because I get a better understanding of where we are in the process. You can hear some of the judges' comments about next steps and hearings and so on and so forth. I mean, we can go to the documents, but what's next? I don't know. I don't know where this goes from here. body cam, he pull these crimes. This is all believed to have occurred. Man, I mean, this is all believed to occur in his residence, based on the holding area. Now, what is the holding area? Like Heuermann's setup, let's just call it. Where? Did I miss it in the press conference? Like, where specifically, these acts of torture were taking place? Like specifically. Because he's doing tremendous work to cover his tracks, but talking about wife and family members, folks, I think that's gonna. I'm not seeing too many other #HeyJB comments or VIP comments coming in, so that is gonna be a wrap for us. Here in the Stream Center, we are focused, of course, on interactively featuring you, and also doing our part to share news, live feeds, press conferences, breaking news stories, aerial coverage, you name it. If it's a news feed that I can access here in the Stream Center, we get access to thousands of feeds. I'm going to hit it with a tap of a button, tap of a touchscreen, go to it live, and be able to present those feeds to you, our audience. If you appreciate the work that we are doing here, it's definitely out of the ordinary when it comes to the traditional news format. You can follow me on social. You can shoot me a message. You can also just tune in for future live streams. I'm not really the YouTube type where it's like click the like button and subscribe. I mean, you don't need, if you like the content, hit the like button and subscribe. You don't need, me to tell you to do that. I mean, I think people know how YouTube works for the most part. So that's just some of the ways that you can always voice your support. And we're activating new tools on our website, www.heyjb.live, where you can submit story ideas that you think that we should be covering here in the Stream Center. Like, what should we be talking about? What should we be covering? What stories matter to you? So we're very mindful of the feedback that comes in. Email address, heyjb@wfla.com. And then you can follow me at WFLAJB across virtually every social media platform, including here on Facebook, for those still tuning in on Facebook. Anybody out there, Facebook? Most people are watching on YouTube and WFLA.com, but YouTube, you guys still there? Hanging out? Well, appreciate everybody joining us. I'll be tweeting out and sharing updates on this story and other stories that we cover with such tremendous focus here in the Stream Center. And I'll be, of course, posting on my various social platforms and checking, of course, as well for other stories that we should be on top of. Really appreciate everybody's time. Appreciate all the HeyJB comments. Appreciate everybody joining us interactively on the website, heyjb.live. And we'll see you next time here from the Stream Center. Be well and take care of each other, folks.